Hello, Parzell's Middle School. This is the second of two podcasts on the peculiar institution, which is American slavery. Now, the peculiar institution is ultimately our second discussion on what slavery was like in the United States of America. We already discussed previously that slavery has five major factors. It exists today. And we also discussed that the peculiar institution is unique to the United States of America for several reasons, as outlined in the lower left. The next thing that I just want to refresh our memories on is the history of slavery in of itself. And the history of slavery goes back to this western coast of Africa. And in this area, this is where the Portuguese first began to enslave Africans and trade other Africans to obtain slaves. Africans were taking other Africans into slavery in tribal warfare. And ultimately, at Jamestown, is up here in the upper right, is when there became a serious need for slaves due to the tobacco industry, which was growing and booming at Jamestown. And ultimately, plantations began to develop all across the United States, especially in the South. Now, the United States Constitution outlawed the importation of slaves from Africa in the year 1808, and this was a constitutional agreement at the convention. However, in 1793, the cotton gin really brought about a whole new crop, and that one crop that would be dominant and really most of the world would depend on our growth of this crop. Our nation became relatively dependent in the South on this crop. Perhaps one of the greatest evils of slavery has to do with the Middle Passage. And Middle Passage was the travel from Africa to the New World, meaning the U.S. And this was typically a 3, sometimes 6 week event. And you can see here in the picture to the right, this is what it would have been like for individuals to travel in the cargo hold of a ship. And down here, we actually see from a log of a slave ship captain how to load Africans onto the ship. Middle Passage was not easy. Many times about 1/3 of the cargo, so you can imagine, like almost this entire area here, about 1/3 would lose their life in Middle Passage. This was horrific. As already described, the United States of America actually outlawed importation in 1808, yet our slave population will continue to increase up and through the year 1860, where we almost have 4 million slaves in the United States out of 31 million. And much of this is due to the fact, as seen here, that the average slave woman was giving birth to just over 9 children. In the United States of America, slavery was what we call perpetual. And what we mean by perpetual is it was ongoing, continuing. You could not get out of it. Anybody that was even 1 ounce slave was born into slavery, even if, imagine this, the slave owner was the father. Life on the plantation was very different than what we typically think of. There was a family structure. There were actually activities. Music was very important. We had the master. That's the person that owned the plantation, but we also had somebody in charge of the discipline. That would be the overseer. And then we also had this intangible thing known as paternalism, really a parent-child relationship between slave and master. But the bottom line is life on the plantations was very different. It was unique. Southerners, knowing that slavery was being attacked by abolitionists and so forth in the North, they tried to justify slavery, and they tried to justify it using a scientific argument. George Fitzhugh and Dr. Samuel Cartwright sort of led this argument.